Amen.
Brothers and sisters, most of you know that I live in Lake Grove, which is east of here, and I live on a long street called Lafayette Avenue. And at one end of the street is kind of the area where we live, and at the other end of the street is a little nicer area. What's particularly nice about it are some of the people who live down there, who we've gotten to know because of dog walking. Dog walking is a great way to meet people. And by going down that end of the block, which we never really visited until we walked our dogs, we met one person in particular whose name is Tom. Tom is a retired steel worker. And he is a really tall and husky guy and an extremely friendly person. So when you go down that end of the block, Tom is usually sitting in his garage, and he has a little workshop there, and he's puttering around, and if he sees you, he'll come right out and say hello, and we get into a nice little talk with him for 10, 15 minutes every time we go down that way. Tom is a person who is a people person. He really loves people, and he knows everybody on the block. He tells me about how the block was 30, 40 years ago when he first moved out to Lake Grove from the Bronx, where he grew up. And he knows everyone. Standing with Tom for 10 or 15 minutes in front of his house, every single car that passes slows down, honks their horn, waves to him. He is like the mayor of the town. But the reason that everyone is so fond of Tom is that he is really a person who cares about other people. He knows people. He knows their names. And he knows their stories. He's interested and he's invested in their lives. In his little workshop in his garage, he has all of the tools of his former trade, all this rebar and metal and things like that. And he's always making these little plaques that he gives to people with their, like a memento of their union service, or if it's a policeman or a fireman, their badge number, and a little, some kind of little memento that they can, hang on their wall and look on fondly to remind them of their years of service. Tom is always doing things for people. There's a guy in the neighborhood who, unfortunately, his car was repossessed. So Tom loaned him a car and gave him advice on how to get a loan and how to get a new car. He takes people's kids to school if it's raining, drives around the neighborhood, and he tells me this is how it used to be. We used to look out for each other. We used to care for each other. The stories that I've heard from Tom over the years about big potluck suppers and spaghetti dinners and things like that are hard to imagine. Down my end of the block, people are much less engaged with each other. We see each other, we may wave, but it's not as heartfelt, and there's not really any kind of real commitment or involvement with each other's lives. So Tom kind of illustrates to me, at least, what it might be like if we really took the Christian life seriously, if we were really involved with others and cared for them. That would be the way that we ought to live. And, as Christians, it's not just a question about knowing people and caring for them or being nice. The Christian life is really the life of union with God. We have to get to know God and be united to Him. And it has been said that we are no closer to God than we are close to our worst enemy. And this is really something to think about. It's easy to be close and loving to people who are nice to you, who are your friends. But it's really hard to do that for people who are strangers, or even for people who are antagonistic to us. But that is our responsibility. We have to become saints, but we have to become saints in such a way that we can convince others of the existence of sanctity, that we can become a living icon and show others how it might be in their lives if they became intimate and familiar with God. So that God's grace is not just an abstract idea, but it's a realized thing in each of our lives that is visible. And this is the kind of evangelization that we are called to as Christians. Tom gives us an example of community, of caring, of Christian life in action. He shows us how we might be living in a Christian world. Amen.
Amen.